we go again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our channel. I'm Becky.
And I'm Chloe.
And here we are, once again. It's been a while, but we are back with more Kingkiller Chronicle content.
We're back. There's new Kingkiller Chronicle content.
Indeed.
So of course we have to make a video about it. Becky is gonna tell us some more Bast Facts.
Yeah. So we did promise a while back to make more Kingkiller content, specifically about the Lacklesses. This is not that video. We still have not done that. I'm sorry. But today we are going to be talking about this new book, which is a Kingkiller Chronicles story that has just come out this past year. So I'm gonna just tell you about this book. You might be wondering, you might have seen this around. You might be wondering what this is, what it's about, what's going on. So I just wanted to make a video about discussing this book specifically, The Narrow Road Between Desires, and highlight some of the differences between this story and the original story it's based on, and just kind of go through what this book is. Should you buy it? Is it worth reading it if you've read the other story? Just kind of break it down a little bit for everyone and just really deep dive into this story. And of course, this story is about Bast, so more Bast facts.
And to be clear, I have not read this or the other thing. Becky's just gonna be explaining it to me, just like she is to you. Maybe you've read it. Maybe you know more than I do, actually. I'm just here to react and have a good time.
So, you may or may not know that there is a short story about Bast called The Lightning Tree. And that was written by Patrick Rothfuss in 2014. And it was published in this short story anthology called Rogues. So this story follows Bast through a typical day in his life, showing what kinds of things he does around the town where they live, which most notably include his interactions with young children at this location called the Lightning Tree, where he makes deals with them for various things. So that's the bare bones of what the story's about. So the new book, A Narrow Road Between Desires, is a standalone novella, which was just published in November 2023. Which is essentially an expansion / rewriting of that original short story. So it's published in its own, standalone individual book. It's got a really pretty cover. It's got these really pretty, purple marble end pages.
Got Bast Thirst Trap.
Yeah, plenty of new illustrations, including Bast Thirst Trap. That's what we all need. I think it said there was 45 illustrations by Nate Taylor, who has done other Name of the Wind art before. He did the art in the Ari book. So it's, it has a lot of nice visuals accompanied with it. And also it breaks down the story into individual chapters that kind of show the progression of the day. Oh my God, why do we already only have 10 minutes left? Okay, so as far as the overall differences, so there is a forward section where Patrick Rothfuss explains why he wrote this in this version. And it basically states that this book is a total rewrite of the original story with an additional 15,000 words added.
He's so busy thinking about Bast to write a third book?
I guess. So the basic structure of the story is the same. Most of the same things happen, but there are a lot more details of some of the things. There's a lot of little changes, the phrasing of a lot of the scenes are slightly altered or reworded in a way that you would only notice if you're looking at them both side to side, which I was doing. But there is a lot more details that were added, a lot of content that was added, and that means there's a lot more for us to conspire about. So let's dive right in. All right, so first things first. The first thing that really stood out to me as I was reading this, the first notable change that I encountered was this part in chapter 2, which is the scene of Bast where he's charming the shepherd person, because I was immediately hold up. This was a girl in the other one, right? This was a random girl shepherdess lady that he charms and then bangs, right? I was questioning myself. I was huh? Hold on, because in this story, it's actually a man shepherd.
A man shepherd?
A man! who it is still implied that Bast goes and has sex with right then and there. And I was really, really losing it about this because we have had no indication prior to this moment that Bast may in fact actually be bisexual. But here Patrick is telling us straight up that Bast is bisexual. So like...
Bast confirmed.
Bast Kvothe confirmed.
Bast Kvothe confirmed. Yeah, he's
like,
he's
it's
in love
real.
with him. How many times? I wait, hold on. I love that we have this random little scene of Bast fucking a random man, and from that we're like, oh yeah, he's definitely gonna bang Kvothe. Of course, that's what that means.
I
Does
mean,
it? I don't know, but it might. It might.
You know, my thoughts are, is he just trying to include this to include more diversity in the book? Because there are a couple of other random like gender changes. Like the first child that he encounters is a girl instead of a boy in the original one. There's this other kid who is implied to be transgender. So I was like, is Patrick just like trying to
Suddenly
include more diversity?
friendly name of the
Right,
list.
right. Or is this a thing that he had been implying from the beginning, that Bast is supposed to be bisexual the whole time, and like
We
just
should have known that he's trying to bang Kvothe and Chronicler and been like, oh yeah, that's what's going on.
right. So
Can I get the Wise Man's Fear rewrite where he bangs Tempe instead of those random ladies? Can I get that?
Who, Kvothe?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate question is, like, is this still just a one-sided Bast love thing? Like, I think, to me, like, this totally can imply that Bast does indeed have some kind of romantic feelings for Kvothe because of the way he reacts to him and interacts with him and, like, his intensity about him. But
He's
that doesn't...
him a bedtime story.
Yeah, a lullaby. But that doesn't necessarily mean that Kvothe is feeling the same way towards him. So, you know, I don't know. But if there's one thing you take away from this video, it's that Bast Kvothe is real. And then there's also, like, when this kid randomly mentions Felurian in this story, like, Bast's reactions to Felurian are...
Hold on. Why do children know what Felurian's doing? Or do they? Have they just heard of her?
I think they know that Kvothe had an interaction with Felurian. And, like, the reaction that Bast has when the kid mentions Felurian is like Felurian. Like, reasoning that he would be annoyed about Felurian is that he's upset that Kvothe banged her, or...
And not him?
Yes. Or, like, I don't know, just some other weird connection that he has to Felurian that we don't know, because that's also the speculation that
his mom or aunt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know, I just find it odd that he reacts like in that way, and I don't know, I just find this whole additional bisexual Bast content.
Yowie? Past the alley.
Who knows?
I feel like sometimes in like fictional things, like characters that are attracted to multiple genders are kind of portrayed in that way, where it's like, oh, they'll bang anything that moves. You know what I mean? And, because it's a slutty character, that means he would also bang men, actually. Not great, like, as a vibe, but I feel like that does happen in, like, other, you know, series. Like, it's always, like, the flirty character that's bi.
Maybe it's just because, Bast is sleeping around, maybe he can bang some men, too. Sure, he'll do anything.
Yeah, right.
Versus, he actually is just pansexual because he's a fae, and they don't care. Like, I feel like those are two different vibes. You know what I mean? And it could be either. We don't know.
Right. Well, and then there is this other thing near the end of this where he's talking to the kid again. So another like thing that happens in this book that's the same in both stories is that he finds out where this one girl takes her bath, and he like goes to watch her, and then they bang right there. But there's also a part before that where he's taking a bath and she's like watching him take a bath. So I guess it's mutual between these two. There's this quote where the kid, he's the one that told him where she is, and I guess the reason that and this was different in this one, the reason that he told him where she takes her bath is because she specifically wanted Bast to know. So
she told a little child to tell him?
Yeah, I guess. Again, I don't know how old any of these people are. Like, But I guess there's like a crew of like older teenagers that's like Bast is in the older crew, because then this kid makes this comment like, he says, "I swear the lot of you hopping in and out of haystacks like rabbits hiding in bushes, everyone knows."
The kid said that?
The kid
About
said that to
Bast?
Bast. Like,
Everyone knows?
everyone knows. Everyone knows that all these there's this whole crew of kids that are just banging each other, and like Bast is part of that, and everyone knows, and it's like boys and girls and all of them. I'm just like, okay. Moving away from that. So one of the main storylines in this book, or really the main storyline that progresses throughout this book, is the situation between him and this one child named Reich.
The situation.
It's a situation. So like the overall situation is this kid wants Bast to get rid of his father for him. Maybe he wants him to kill him, maybe he wants him just to be gone. They kind of have that discussion at some point, but that's like the overarching like thing that's happening in this book, is that this kid comes to him and he wants him to get rid of his father. So that whole situation is like set up very differently, and it's executed very differently in this book in comparison to the initial story. So starting off at the very beginning, you get a little more description of that kid, Reich, and it like kind of immediately creates this like weird sus atmosphere about it. Like, then when another kid mentions him again, he's like, "Oh, this kid wants to meet with you." Bast is like getting all uncomfortable, feeling uncomfortable that the kid is looking for him, and it's like this immediate like weirdly sus atmosphere. So then we've got the other kid. So there's like two main kids in this story. There's Reich and then there's Kostrel. So this is the kid who comes to ask him about fairies, and that content is not really different between them. So that's one of the main, I would say, reasons to read this book, is because it kind of gives you a lot of details about fae that are not mentioned in the other books at all, like because this kid is specifically asking Bast like specific questions about what type of magic fairies use and like what fairies look like and things like that, and it just kind of gives you a little more detail about that from Bast's point of view. But then it also goes into this whole other thing suddenly, which is about like how fairies should not accept gifts from humans and the reasoning for that. And so we've got Kostrel comes to him and he says he has a gift for him, and Bast is like thinking about how he shouldn't accept gifts and like the reasoning for that.
The opposite?
Like, are you supposed to not take stuff from?
What does he think the humans are gonna do to him?
Well, apparently,
What's he so worried about?
If you accept a gift, it can like bind you into like an obligation to the human, or like it's basically like it creates like a binding to you, which like this is totally new information. I don't think this has ever been said in the other books. This is not in the original story. This is only in this. And Bast is thinking about this, and what he says initially is he wasn't wise, but he had been burned before, and wary was wisdom's cousin. Still, his curiosity itched at him, but no, Bast had not the least desire to be bound. And then he does accept the gift, and it says when he accepts it, he didn't recognize the thing, but the sensation wasn't something you forgot. Which, like, is implying that he's been bound before.
He's been, like, enslaved or something?
Yeah.
What does bound mean? Is that, like, what's the time limit?
Forever, until they release you, I think.
What?
Like,
you
until
accept one gift and you're bound forever?
Well, I think there's, like, a variety of intensity to it, because he eventually goes on to describe like the types of things that can bind fae. But like before we even get into that, I was like, he's clearly implying that he's been bound before by someone, by a human.
Some like Bartimaeus djinn.
Right. Well, it's like you have like an obligation to them, like they're in control of you. Yeah.
Are they just like a slave? Like they just have to do whatever they want?
I mean, it doesn't really specify to that degree, but that's what I would assume, because it's such an intense like worry that he has. So I was like, how and why has he been bound in the past? And then of course I was like, maybe Kvothe is binding him right now. And like, but then I was like, well, maybe Bast was like bound to someone when he met Kvothe, and Kvothe like helped him get rid of it or something. And that's why he's like so grateful to him, is because he like saved him from this binding or something.
That is something we've been wondering this whole time.
Right. Like, why is he
so obsessed with?
Yeah. So I don't know. That could be.
Do you think that will be content in the next book that will never come out? Like flashback to... Well, no, he would get to it in the story, right?
Right.
Then met Bast.
Yeah, exactly.
He was enslaved to this evil man and I killed him. And now Bast is my best friend.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then Bast tells him about the Chandrian because Bast has Chandrian knowledge or whatever. Because at some point in one of the videos, we said something about maybe Bast is giving him information, and that's why he went out to find a fae, because he was looking for information about the Chandrian. So maybe he encountered this fae, and he was bound to some random human, and Bast was like, if you save me, I'll give you information. And then he just like fell in love with him, you know? And he's like, I never want to leave, actually. You're so cool. I'm so grateful to you.
So cool.
But it does say later on, he felt around inside himself and found that he found what he knew would be true. The only obligations binding him were old, familiar things, most barely more than scars, some few resembling wounds old soldiers had. So I was like, so does he still have a binding? Like, is he still under some obligation to someone? Or like, what? Is he just considering whatever weird obligation he has to Kvothe as like a type of a binding, but it's not like hella intense like all these other ones? I don't know. I was just very like, has he been bound before? How and why and who? Is it still happening? Does he have other obligation bindings things? Like, I don't know. It's just a weird thing that's suddenly here that's never been mentioned. But so then, you know, in this initial scene, he goes on to like list some things that could bind him. He mentions like something that's made of bone. He says, what if there was a ruby hidden unseen in the stone? What if the thing had been adored, cherished, cared for, generations old, passed from hand to hand with love, heavy as a shackle made of gold? Which to that, I was like, it made me think of like the weird blanket that he has.
Oh no! Wait, is he binding him with that blanket?
I don't know. Well, I mean, that's the thing is like, if that was like a gift that's binding him somehow, not that like he treats it as like a shackle or anything, but it certainly like meets the description of something cherished and old, right?
Maybe that's... we don't know how old it is, do we?
I guess not, but it's clearly like
busted up.
It could be related, could not.
Kvothe into giving him a gift so he could like, serve him.
What? So it's like not a real binding, like he doesn't consider it a real binding because that's what he wants.
Yeah.
But he's like shackled to him now forever.
Yeah. They're actually married now and Kvothe doesn't even know it.
Kvothe doesn't even know. Oh my god. Oh Jesus. Maybe. So he accepts the gift against his better judgment, and he immediately has this reaction to it like he's just been bound.
You don't know how to control him?
Well, no, like it turns out it was actually the other kid that gave the gift to this kid to give to him. So it's like, it's Reich that's the one controlling him, that the main kid, Reich. So Kostrel's the one giving it to him, and he accepts it because he's like, oh, I trust Kostrel. He's a good kid. Like, he would never. And then turns out the gift was actually from Reich, and he's like, God damn it, fucking Reich. And again, it's a sus situation because Reich hasn't even appeared in the story yet, and you're like, what the fuck is Reich doing? Like, why do they have this beef? So Reich binds him by giving him this thing. So before it even reveals what the thing is, he goes on to think about things that are actually capable of binding him specifically. Like, despite what story said, it was no simple thing to truly bind one such as Bast. And the list of things that could do so, as sudden, hard, and heavy as this gift had managed, was short indeed. Grandfather Iron would work, of course, or a piece of star that fell...
Grandfather Iron?
Grandfather Iron. A piece of star that fell to earth. One of a handful of dark and ancient links of broken chain... ...
What?
Yeah, like, me reading that, like, Encanis? Like... That was my initial thought. I was like, wait, isn't that what happened to like Encanis and like Ajax? And maybe they're the same. Maybe Bast is Ajax the whole time. Anyway, then he says...
What was the other stuff? Grandfather Iron?
I don't know what Grandfather Iron is in comparison to regular iron.
Is he just giving it respect?
It must mean like really old iron. And then it also lists a seal of sovereign gold might work, but only with the proper names. A ring of amber was an older trick, but Bast hadn't seen one in mortal ages. So then he looks at it, and it's like some piece of brass with like the church insignia on it. And it has some weird language phrase on it that Bast reads.
How did this kid get this?
I guess he got it from the church, like the church person in the town. The explanation is that this thing in the church is supposed to represent penance. So the kid is basically like trying to... Well, no, he's trying to offer penance to Bast for something that he did in the past. Like, offer, like, a peace treaty to him. Be like, here's my, like, penance to you.
So, okay,
take this gift.
Hold on. What is the situation here? The priest was like, oh, here, little boy, take this thing.
Well, I'm assuming...
Church, and the little boy's like, you know what? I'm going to use this to bind a fae.
No,
Is that what happened?
No. The situation... All right, here's the timeline of events.
Please.
The kid did something to Bast in the past. He, like, betrayed him somehow. Like, eventually, like, it explains a little tiny bit. It doesn't really explain it, but it does say that he'd broken faith with Bast and, like, betrayed him somehow. So that happened in the past. Bast hates him now, is like annoyed with him for whatever that was. So now the kid needs Bast's help. So he's like, I need to do something to show him that I'm not like gonna betray him again and that he'll actually help me. So I think he just went to the church and was like, what can I do to get him to trust me? And I guess the church guy was like, this thing is for penance. So he's like giving it to him as like penance of like, I am sorry that I betrayed you. Like, please like accept this as like, you know, a truce basically. And I understand that I did wrong. So the kid is not actually trying to bind him. That's the whole situation. Like he's unaware that this is binding him. It just happens to be this like random intense...
Do they even know he's a fairy or no?
No.
I just think he's a guy.
Yeah, they just think he's a guy. So that he has no idea that this is some really like intense thing capable of binding someone as powerful as Bast. So then the next big change with regards to this Reich situation is like the whole setup of the deal that they make. Like the bargain itself is the same as far as like he wants Bast to get rid of his father for good, but not actually kill him. But in the original story, it's just like a random verbal agreement that they make. Like he's just like, all right, we'll make this deal. Yeah, I'll do this. But in this one, it's like a whole big intense situation.
Is it like a ritual or something?
Yeah, it's like a whole ritual. And there's this
boy.
Picture that I'm going to put right here because it's an insane looking picture.
What? Oh, goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is he like getting energy from the moon?
I don't know. There sure is sus
Why does
moon
he
content.
look so evil? Like, why are his eyes black?
He's a fae making a deal with a human. I don't know.
Okay.
It's like crazy looking. Yeah, so basically they like go up to the lightning tree.
Oh, he's got his go feet.
Okay, so this deal, they put their hands on the tree and they put their blood on it. So yeah, he like makes the kid specifically say, I want to make a deal with you. And then it becomes this whole weird, bizarre ritual thing where the kid is like looking at Bast and then it seems like he's moving, but he's not moving. And then there's this like, the scene is like playing like 4 different times and they're saying all these weird things to each other. And each time it's acting like it's the first time that they've gone there and done this, and it's really like so bizarre. I guess the conclusion is that that's what like fae magic is, and that's what happens when you make a deal with a fae, is like this whole weird like crazy thing. And then I wrote some like notable lines from that specific part where it says, Bast smiled as underneath the weight of his desire, time began to shift and break. I don't know what that means.
Time began to break?
Yeah. And then Bast saying, I do this and you're mine till I say otherwise. I own you to the middle of your bones.
Bast said that?
Yeah, so
I thought the kid owned him.
Right, so through this deal, he ends up breaking the other binding. And he's
Isn't
like,
that why they're doing the deal?
it's basically, yeah, it's like through the deal he's making. He's like, if I do this for you, I will not owe you anything. But instead, I own you. Like, that's the deal. Like, I'm not going to do it unless you agree that I am not owing you anything, and instead you're owing me everything. Like, I own you now. So, like, that's part of the deal, like, the wording of the deal.
If you're writing a story, you're telling a story and you're setting it up, and you set up this premise of binding fae to your will, and this kid did it, but he didn't even know, and then Bast has to do something for him. Wouldn't it make sense if the plot was the kid gave him the thing, he's like, oh shit, I gotta do this favor for this kid now because he gave me the thing, and that's why he had to do it? Like, why are we introducing this whole ritual where he broke it but then redid it and then he's gonna do it anyway? And it's like, you already had setup there.
I mean,
like,
I guess
you could have just given him the thing and been like, oh, I want you to do whatever, and Bast's like, well, I have to do it because I'm magically obligated to do it.
Well, I mean, I think that is still the motivating factor, because he can only get out of the binding by making this new deal, I think. Even though the kid doesn't specifically know that he's controlling him to do it, I think that is Bast's motivation to do it, is like to then be able to say, all right, I'm going to use this as a way to get out of this obligation, actually.
Right, but I think it would make more sense if he completed the task,
then he would get out of it.
The binding.
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not like the binding is not just like, oh, do this one thing and then the binding is over. It's like, it's a binding for life kind of thing.
Like, it could have been, though, because he just made this up now. This
but
a previous story.
Right, but then I feel like
you think Patrick made this book because he was making up some other information and was like, oh, I gotta incorporate this somewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I do kind of think that, like, the purpose of this book is partly to inform readers of these details about the Fae and what they do and what things, what bindings are, and that bindings are relevant, which, you could think that he's putting this because binding Fae, or binding Bast specifically, is going to be relevant in the future, right? And he's like, actually, I need to give you this background information now.
Bro, just write it in your book.
He does this whole weird ritual and it's described really weirdly. But then after that, it's like Reich didn't even know that was even happening at all. Like, there's no indication that he thinks anything was weird, or that he even has, like, there's no indication that he even has cuts on his fingers from the blood that's all over the tree. So, like, I don't know. I don't know. It's all weird as fuck. He's aware that he's making a deal, but then it, like, erases from his memory. I don't know. Like, obviously he doesn't know that Bast is a Fae, so I'm like, how did he partake in this ritual without knowing?
A random guy from the neighborhood is like, yeah, I'll do a favor for you, but we gotta do a ritual first. And you're just like, okay. Like, what? You just think that's normal?
So then, like, the last part of the Reich storyline is, or the last part that's not in the original story at all, is Bast telling him to sit by the tree all night, like, thinking about what he truly wants and who he truly is and such. And it's, like, ominous with the moon over him, and, like, it's weird. Honestly, it's, like, almost like Bast giving this kid a random motivational speech about how he's actually a good person and he's not a liar and he's not a bad kid.
I thought Bast hated this kid.
Well, I mean, I guess he doesn't like him because of whatever betrayal he did in the past, but he's also, like, recognizing that he, like, is just trying to help his family, and he's trying to get rid of his, like, shitty dad, and, like, because, like, he wants to help his mom and his, like, sisters or whatever, and he, like, doesn't want them to be living this bad life, so he's just, like, trying to, like, do a good thing, I guess, and he's just this little child, It's like, I think Bast is like, oh, rip to this kid, like...
Bast is sympathetic.
Yeah, because there's even this part where he, like, hugs him, which is honestly, like, a really cute picture. But it's like, it's very bizarre, actually, because, like,
he literally says
caring about other people.
Right, it's like,
it's a sweet scene, but it's also insanely bizarre, like, showing Bast with such an affectionate side, honestly. Like,
playing this kid.
Do you think he relates to that child for some reason?
I don't know, maybe.
Does he see himself? He has a shitty dad. Oh, his dad's Remmen. Remmen is a bad...
maybe. I don't know. I don't know what his childhood was like.
Who's the guy we're always saying everyone is? Lanre?
There's many people we're saying are many other people.
Who's like the main evil dude? Lanre?
Haliax, Lanre, Ayak, they're all the same.
Remmen is someone bad.
Because I feel like when you have a character like that, that's not usually caring. I feel like when they do, like, care about, like, a child, it's because they can, like, relate to them.
True.
I'm saying this in, like, a media, in, like, fiction. Oh, for whatever reason, they relate to them, or they see themselves in them in some kind of way, and then they feel sympathetic toward them, or empathetic toward them, whereas, like, maybe they wouldn't normally care about, like, a random child. So that's why I'm like, oh, did this happen to Bast too? So
right, like I understand, like that does make sense. But like then it says, as he's doing this, it says, and in this moment, in this place, Bast held his heart's desire like a nail that he would hammer hard into the world.
And I don't know what that means. I don't know. What a great question.
I mean, what a great thought.
Is it?
I mean, we've never discussed Bast's fatherhood before, have we? Oh no, I think we did say maybe he's the father and Kvothe is the child.
He wants to wife Kvothe and have a baby.
Yeah, perhaps. But yeah, okay, so this does bring up the question, what is his heart's desire? Which leads us into the whole like desire content or like comments about desire. Obviously the book is called The Narrow Road Between Desires, so it's like there's all this stuff about like Bast's true desires and stuff.
Is his desire to help this child?
I guess.
I mean, in that moment, I guess, probably not for his whole life. But whatever you just said, it sounded like it's like part of the ritual or something, or part of the mindset of whatever he's doing.
Right, it seems like it's directly related to this moment.
Right, so maybe it's his desire at that moment is that he wants to help this little boy?
So that kind of leads into this line that we put in the other Bast video, which we had always found to be like the interesting line and confusing with regards to what his true desires are. But that line is like just slightly different in this version. It has the same initial beginning, which is he had never been in conflict with his own desire before this place. It used to be so easy, want and have, see and take, run and chase, thirst and slake. Now everything was complicated, right? Okay, like that's the first beginning of that quote. But then the next part is changed a little bit from, in the initial one it says, and if he were thwarted in pursuit of his desire, what of it? That was simply the way of things. The desire itself was still his, it was still pure. That line is changed to, so much of what he longed for he could not pursue, and every day he felt more turned from his own true ... Which
self or heart?
I don't know.
I was gonna say, does he want to be a human?
I don't know. I mean, I think the overall concept is his desires are changing from wanting to do all these bad things to wanting to be better. But so it goes on after that. The original one says, now his desires grew complicated. They constantly conflicted with each other. He felt endlessly turned against himself. Nothing was simple anymore. He was pulled so many ways. In the new one, it says, Bast knew how fast a town could turn. He'd seen it. One day everything was kisses and cake, but let one little secret slip and suddenly the only choice was fire and iron, or flee and leave it all behind. But here and now, he did not want to leave. What's more, his secrets were all tangled in his master's lies. So much he feared that one loose thread might cause the whole thing to unravel. Which is totally different. And then later it goes on to say, before coming to this place with his master, Bast would have reveled in the boy's betrayal. Revenge was such a simple, raw desire, satisfying, clean as fire. There was a sort of dark, hard joy that came from settling a score so solidly it burned some mortal's life straight down to ash. Instead, for the first time, Bast found he wasn't free to do such things, or rather, he was free to choose between desires. To take the sweet and terrible revenge that he was due, or continue to assist his master, to keep their masks intact and stay here tucked away inside the new built inn, all hidden in this quiet little town.
All right, hold up, I got thoughts. Okay, hold on. I gotta gather myself here. So he's saying that basically if they found out he was a fae, they would chase him out and be like, get out of here. And he doesn't want that to happen, not because he wants to be a good person, but because he doesn't want to blow Quote's cover.
Yes.
So because he cares about Kvothe, he doesn't want to be fucking around doing fae shit, because it'll mess up his life. So that's why he has to be good.
Right. Yeah, so it kind of like suddenly is drawing this into Kvothe, like, whereas I feel like before it wasn't like specifically, explicitly connecting his desires to Kvothe, but this like specifically is like his desire is to continue to assist his master and keep their masks intact and like keep their cover.
It mentioned his master's lies, so maybe he's worried that if he gets exposed, somehow Kvothe would get exposed and people would know who he was.
Yeah,
and that would be bad for him.
Right, like I think they're in it together, or whatever it is that they're doing. Also, the comment about the town turning, like, I feel like that was just super weird to me because, like, okay, first of all, he'd seen it. Doesn't that imply that, like, this has happened before to them? Like, he has been in a town where he's been discovered and they've, like, run him out of town or something. Like, that's weird,
well, maybe it happened to him and he doesn't want that to happen now.
Yeah, I guess.
He's leaving Kvothe, right? Or
right.
If he had to leave, it's like, okay, then he cannot continue to assist him, or Kvothe has to leave with him, in which case people would be like, that's us. Why is the innkeeper involved with this?
Ultimately, his desires are 100% surrounded by Kvothe's happiness. Like, once again, why?
Forget whatever I said about helping people. Never mind. He doesn't want to help people.
No, he only wants to help Kvothe. I don't know, to me, like, the whole comment about the fire and iron, anytime I see the words fire and iron, I just immediately think of the Chandrian. What if, of course, immediately my head is like, what if Bast is a Chandrian? Because, that's always the go-to. And, like, if that was the case, it would be like, he's the one using iron and fire to destroy the towns that are trying to fuck him up, actually.
Oh, because I took that as people would try to attack him with iron, because iron hurts.
Right, I mean, I think that's how it's supposed to be taken. And I was also thinking, like, how the Chandrian sign is, like, the rusting iron. I was like, oh, maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe the Chandrian are doing that because the towns are, like, trying to use iron against them. And that kind of makes sense of, like, the town is trying to deter the Chandrian.
So the Chandrian are fae.
Right. Okay, yeah, so another comment about the desire before that was that it says, this is when Kostrel is asking him about the glamoury and stuff, and he suddenly has this thought of, like, oh no, what if this kid asks me, like, how to break a glamour, and, like, he suddenly gets like, what if this kid figures out how to break fairy glamoury and stuff? And so it says, and what would Bast do then? Break his promise fairly made? Here, where all things met? That was absolutely retrograde to his desire, and Bast could barely guess at what the consequence would be.
Huh? What was that sentence? Like, what? Some purple prose going on, Patrick? Like, what? Retrograde? Come on.
Retrograde to his desire. So, which that implies that the desire is killing this kid. But this one makes it seem like he's more okay with the killing, but his true desire is not to lie or break his promise. I don't know, it's just very weird. Like, again, like the weird, I don't...
That was a bizarre sentence. Like, I don't even know if I understood that.
I would say, ultimately, this new information, this new change of this addition to the scene is telling us that his desire is fully tied to Kvothe's happiness. Kvothe's, like, existence in this town. And he wants to maintain that. And that is his true heart's desire. With possibly an additional, like, becoming nicer and not killing people and, helping this child. Right? The last, like, added piece to this whole book that is not at all in the other story is this thing about these embrils.
What?
Which is apparently just a thing that Patrick Rothfuss made up, because I tried searching. I was like, what is an embril? Is that a thing, like, in other literature? No, it's just in this, I guess. So it's basically these, like, little stone pieces that are kind of like fortune-telling pieces. Like, they have pictures on them. He gets one of the embrils from the first girl that he talks to. So he takes it, he puts it in his bag. Apparently he has others. And apparently they're just, like, used for fortune telling. So he's, like, randomly pulling out the embrils, like, throughout the day and looking at them and, like, doing something. He's, like, either, like, happy with what it says or, like, annoyed about it and, like, gets another one. But then we get this whole scene of him, like, laying out a whole bunch of them and trying to interpret, like, the whole scene and, like, whatever all of them mean. And then Kostrel comes back and is talking to him about them. Because the kid is like, oh, like that's not right. Or the kid is like, that's not how I would interpret it. But so I didn't really find any significance in the way Bast reads them, except this one point where he like skips over explaining this one piece, and Kostrel asks about it, and Bast is like trying to shrug it off and like gets all tight about it, but he's thinking that like the kid is gonna catch on if he's quiet about it, and he'll like just ask more questions. So he like says, the Iron Crown, I guess that's the picture, is an iron crown. He says, Iron Crown is authority or rule. By itself, it signifies the shattered king.
Majesty and power.
Well, majesty and power, but in ruin, fallen into despair. And then Kostrel's like, despair? And he says, Bast blinked and shook his head, genuinely irritated. No, I meant disrepair. He bowled ahead quickly.
Maybe
like
he's despair about it.
Freudian slip.
Or what I was thinking was like, is this somehow also related to Kvothe? Because
like, is Kvothe the shattered
He
king
lost
who
his
is like
power.
fallen into despair?
Mm-hmm.
And
disrepair.
yeah, and like the way that Bast gets all like annoyed about it and is like,
Yeah, he's
I
like,
don't wanna
oh, I
talk about
know
this.
this is about Kvothe. I don't want to address it. 'cause
Right.
It's upsetting me.
yeah, exactly. So then Kostrel's like, okay, well, I wouldn't interpret them that way at all. And he goes on to like tell his own interpretation, which
I feel like
Like a tarot card.
yeah, basically. So I'm like, this has to have some kind of significance. So he says, a queen, this isn't rain
Oh,
or a
no.
tear. She's soft but hard, powerful and sad. Her tower is broken. She's the weeping queen.
Denna.
right? He's the shattered king and she's the weeping queen.
Oh no.
The moon tile, he says, maybe it's not even the moon. Maybe it's a bowl or horns. Since it's so thin, maybe it means something is about to end, like when the moon has almost gone away. So that's ominous.
Well, the moon is always coming up, isn't it? Isn't there some who has the moon? Ajax? What's
Yes.
going on with the moon?
I don't know. There
Can you
was a
remind me?
question.
No, they took the moon. What happened? What happened? What happened to
Jax-
the moon?
Jax/Ajax stole the moon into the fairy world.
And that's what
Okay.
started the war.
So the
is that-
fairies have the moon. Denna
Well-
is the fairy.
No, the moon goes to the fairy world when it's not in our world. That's
Just
what
like
it says.
Denna
Yes.
is the moon. That
Right.
was the conspiracy.
That
There
was the
she is.
conspiracy, yes.
Okay, I
the
remember.
weeping queen, yeah, okay.
She's the moon.
Yeah, maybe.
So then it says the unlit lamp, then the piper. The piper is in the dark. That means he's lost or ignorant. The closed eye, he's blind. He's supposed to play for folk, make them dance to his tune, but he's the one dancing. He's dancing, but he's too blind to even know it. The fire isn't lit either, so is he 3 times blind? Or wasted potential? Fire that's waiting?
Okay, so that
Or quote.
Right, like either of them, because like the piper metaphor makes me think of Bast, because like the piper is like lures children, right? Like
that's like the thing in that, like the Pied Piper or whatever.
Pied Piper.
like that's a thing related to like children, and like that's what Bast is doing. He's like talking to all these children, and like it's also like adjacent to like him controlling people and like making them dance to his tune or whatever, like,
You know, doing magic on people.
The thing with the Pied Piper story, he got rid of all the rats, right?
Mm.
And it was like they didn't want to pay him or something. So he was like, fuck y'all, I'm gonna take your kids then. So it was like he got screwed over and he was like, nah. So I don't know if that's could be relevant somehow.
like what other things do pipers do in stories? Like are they just like random bards that are just around?
In what the kid said about the tarot card coins, he made it seem like he's like an entertainer.
Right. So, okay, does that
And
actually
Kvothe
refer
is
to
an
Kvothe?
entertainer.
Right.
Who's blind now and he's supposed to be entertaining, but he's the one that's, well, it says he's the one dancing, like he's being controlled by someone. So I was like, is Kvothe being controlled by someone? Is it saying that Bast is the piper and he's being controlled by
Kvothe or by the children or by his desires or whatever? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it might just refer to like power. Like, who has the power?
So, well, like after he says that part, Bast like focuses more. He's like, hold on now, like what? And then it says the arch, it's canted, so maybe it's supposed to be a hole the piper might fall into, as also ominous. And then at the end, the kid is like, well, but you shouldn't like try to make them all fit. Like there's always one that you have to ignore. It's like, okay.
And we don't know which
Right. And I just find all of that fascinating.
I feel like it must have some significance, metaphors.
I mean, the queen has to be Denna, right? Just because there's no other female character that matters.
Right? But
I don't know what she's doing right now. Is she alive?
We don't know. The very last thing that I found that was like randomly weird. At some point he goes to this man's distillery that he finds. And he says this place reminded him of his master's workshop.
And I was like, what? What workshop does Kvothe have?
Okay. That's where he's making the apple pie.
Right. Like, okay.
That's called the kitchen.
Right, exactly. Like,
this is a distillery, which is a place where they make alcohol, I guess. And it's got all these like contraptions. And he goes in there and he's like, oh, this reminds me of the book that I'm supposed to be reading, which we talked about in the other video, like the Selim Tincture. And he's like, oh, damn, I wish I had that book. I could look up what all these things are, which the book is about alchemy. Okay. So my thought was like, okay, so are you just saying that Kvothe also has a distillery at the end, that he's making his own alcohol? Which seems weird, like that they would
say that. But I also am like,
this is somewhere like in the past where they were, because I don't see how they could really have a workshop at the inn. But maybe if he's been teaching Bast magic and they've been together for some years, maybe at some prior location he did have a workshop where
like
he was
an old
doing
workshop.
magic.
Yeah, maybe. Right, because that's my question, is like the fact that you're calling it a workshop is very odd. Like a distillery is not a workshop. Like
right.
Like
unless
even if
he's using
is
that alcohol to make potions or something.
Right, like either I mean that is a good thought that you said about
maybe he's referring to his old workshop where
when they
like
met
wherever
they
like wherever he used to be before the folly happened, you know.
Because I mean it makes sense, right? If he's like a strong magic user, and maybe this is before he's hiding his identity, right? Mm-hmm. That he would have a magical workshop.
Right, sure.
And I mean, Kvothe knows all those random skills, right? I don't know if he was doing alchemy, but he was doing other random crap.
Well, that's another thing, is like, I swear it says in the book that he's not good at alchemy specifically. Like,
but he was doing like other stuff, like
artificery.
Artificery, but that's like making stuff.
That's like building. Yeah, it's like making things.
So you would have a workshop for
that. Right, but
so Bast is. I guess he's just like, this reminds me of the other.
Maybe, yeah. Like, is he saying it reminds him of it because it has the same types of like chemical like things, or is it just like
a workshop in general?
Right, because that would make sense if it's like, oh, he used to have like a fishery workshop,
and he's like, oh, this is also a workshop.
Have this alchemy book because he's bad at alchemy.
I don't know why he has this book. I don't know why he wants him to read this book of all the books that he's ever owned. Like, it's very odd.
Philosophy in that book.
Yeah, I don't know. The other option would be that he does have some weird workshop at the inn, and it's like, what?
But I don't know. I was gonna say I feel like that would have come up.
Yeah, but you would think.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know. Weird. I don't know why he would have a workshop. And then during that part, I also had this random thought where I was like, what if his master is not even referring to Kvothe at all?
It's Skarpi.
No.
Skarpi. It's always Skarpi.
No. Oh my god. I mean, maybe because I was trying to because in this story, there'll be scenes with Kvothe where he's interacting with Kvothe, and it like always refers to Kvothe as the innkeeper in those scenes. So I was like, does it ever actually refer to Kvothe as his master in these scenes?
Turns out it does.
In the actual book or in this book?
In this book, specifically.
Well, I feel like in the actual book it does.
I mean, it must, because I was like...
I'm sure he's called him his master before, no?
You would think, you would assume,
I mean, that sounds familiar, but no.
Yeah, I mean, turns out he does say it at the very end in this, so I was like, okay, it's fine. He is the master. But I really had a moment where I was like, what if he's not even the master this whole time? What if Bast is being controlled by some other person this whole time? And
like, Kvothe just doesn't even know. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. I don't know how long this video is, but that seems like I said a lot. We talked for a while. In conclusion, I would say it's a good book. I enjoyed it. I would recommend buying it. I would say, like, If you've never read The Lightning Tree, this is a good substitute instead. Like, I would say you don't have to read The Lightning Tree if you just want to read this. Like, I think this has the same exact content, but expands on it a lot more. So if you're just going to read one of them, read this one. If you've already read The Lightning Tree, I would still say read it because it has all these slight differences that, you know, you might find more meaning in them than even I did. So let me know if you read it, if you liked it, if you have other thoughts about other things that I didn't mention. Anything else?
Pass the yowie.
Bye.